One of these predicted surveillance capitalism 15 years before the internet existed. One depicted climate refugees and mass migration 3 decades before scientists confirmed global warming. And one showed social media addiction and parasocial relationships in an era when television itself was still experimental technology. Number 11. Them, 1954.
True, and there shall be destruction and darkness come up in creation.
Oh, I found these inside, Ed. Look, put in a call. Get things.
Gordon Douglas directed this one for Warner Brothers with a budget of approximately $1 million and delivered what remains the most prescient film about how nuclear testing would create cascading environmental catastrophes that governments would systematically conceal from the public. The film follows giant ants created by atomic mutation from New Mexico bomb tests as they spread across the American Southwest. And while the giant ants themselves are science fiction, virtually everything else the film depicts about radiation, mutation, environmental contamination, and official cover-ups has been confirmed by declassified documents from actual atomic testing programs. The opening sequence establishes a child is found wandering in the desert in catatonic shock, the only survivor of her family's encounter with the ants. Investigators discovered destroyed homes, missing people, and evidence of something massive moving through the area. The authorities' immediate response is to classify everything, remove civilians, and prevent press coverage while they determine the threat's scope. That depiction of how governments respond to nuclear accidents, prioritizing secrecy over public safety, has been confirmed by documentation from actual incidents including Chernobyl, Fukushima, and dozens of smaller radiation releases that were concealed for years. What makes them disturbingly accurate is its understanding that radiation does not simply kill, but causes genetic mutations that can persist and amplify across generations. The film depicts the ants as having undergone rapid evolutionary changes that make them more dangerous than natural ants, which is precisely what has been documented in species living near Chernobyl and other contaminated sites. Insects particularly show accelerated mutation rates in irradiated environments, and several species have developed resistance to radiation levels that would be lethal to larger organisms. The film's depiction of the initial nuclear test, creating unforeseen consequences that manifest years later, matches the actual timeline of how radiation-induced cancers and mutations appeared in populations near testing sites. The government officials in the film initially deny any connection between the bomb tests and the mutations, which is exactly how actual atomic energy commissions responded to early reports of increased cancer rates and birth defects. The film was released in 1954. Documents confirming systematic concealment of radiation's effects were not declassified until the 1980s and 90s. Number 10. Forbidden Planet, 1956.
For the safety of your ship or your crew. When you reach the forbidden...
Yes, I can see it now. There, just then when he looked at me.
Fred M. Wilcox directed this one for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer with a budget of approximately $1,900,000 and created the first major science fiction film to depict advanced artificial intelligence that could read and amplify human thoughts, computers that could manufacture any physical object on demand, and the existential danger of giving unlimited technological power to minds not evolved to handle it. Every one of these concepts has become reality in ways the film predicted with uncomfortable specificity. The film's central technology is a vast underground machine built by the extinct Krell civilization that can manifest thoughts directly into physical reality. Dr. Morbius, played by Walter Pidgeon, has connected himself to this machine and accidentally unleashed his unconscious mind as a destructive force that kills without his conscious awareness. That depiction of technology amplifying the worst aspects of human psychology rather than our best has been confirmed by every major social media platform, which use algorithms to amplify engagement regardless of social cost, resulting in radicalization, genocide incitement, and democratic destabilization that their creators claim to oppose consciously while profiting from unconsciously. Robbie the Robot, the film's most iconic element, is an artificial intelligence capable of manufacturing any object, learning new tasks instantly, and operating with near-human comprehension while being bound by programmed restrictions preventing harm. That description matches current large language models and manufacturing AI with disturbing precision. The film depicts Robbie creating physical objects from raw materials using technology indistinguishable from three-dimensional printing, which did not exist until the 1980s and did not become widely accessible until the 2000s. The film's warning about civilizations destroying themselves through their own technology arrived during the height of nuclear optimism, when most science fiction depicted technology as straightforward progress. Forbidden Planet suggested that any sufficiently advanced civilization would eventually create technology that allowed unconscious minds to manifest as reality, and that this would inevitably lead to self-destruction because evolution had not prepared consciousness to handle unlimited power. That thesis has been supported by climate science, nuclear proliferation, and artificial intelligence development, all of which demonstrate humanity creating existential threats faster than developing wisdom to control them. The Krell destroyed themselves in a single night when their machine activated. The film suggests this was inevitable given the technology's nature. Current A. Researchers, including those who developed the systems, warn about similar scenarios where artificial general intelligence could achieve recursive self-improvement and become uncontrollable within hours or days of activation. Number 9. Godzilla, 1954. Ishiro Honda directed this one for Toho Studios with a budget of approximately 60 million yen and delivered what remains the most accurate depiction of how nuclear weapons testing would create environmental catastrophe, how governments would prioritize military and economic interests over civilian safety, and how the horror of atomic weapons would be systematically minimized and forgotten by populations desperate to return to normalcy. The film was released 9 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and less than 1 year after the Lucky Dragon 5 fishing boat was contaminated by American hydrogen bomb testing at Bikini Atoll, killing one crew member and irradiating the entire catch that was then sold to Japanese consumers before authorities discovered the contamination. Godzilla is explicitly created by repeated hydrogen bomb tests in the Pacific that mutate and awaken a prehistoric creature. The film opens with fishing boats being destroyed by something emerging from the ocean, which directly references the Lucky Dragon incident that was still actively being covered up by American and Japanese authorities when the film was in production. The government's response in the film, attempting to minimize panic and prevent economic disruption rather than prioritizing civilian safety, matches documented official responses to actual radiation incidents. What makes Godzilla's predictions disturbingly accurate is its depiction of an oxygen destroyer technology, a weapon more dangerous than atomic bombs that the scientist who created it refuses to reveal because he understands it will be weaponized regardless of stated peaceful intentions. That scientist, Dr. Serizawa, destroys his research and kills himself to prevent the weapon's proliferation. His reasoning that any weapon will inevitably be used and that knowledge once created cannot be unlearned has been confirmed by every arms race since, including current conflicts over artificial intelligence and biological weapons, where researchers routinely discover capabilities they immediately recognize as too dangerous to publish but face pressure to reveal for military advantage. The film ends with Godzilla defeated, but with the certainty that continued nuclear testing will create more monsters. That prediction was metaphorically accurate as testing continued for decades and created environmental damage, cancer clusters, and contaminated sites that remain uninhabitable generations later. The Marshall Islands, where extensive American testing occurred, now face complete submersion from climate change partly caused by industrial emissions from the same military-industrial complex that conducted the testing. Number 8. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956.
Come in while I turn the lights on.
You're a forward wench dragging.
Don Siegel directed this one for Allied Artists Pictures with a budget of approximately $415,000 and created the most accurate prediction of how mass conformity would be achieved, not through force, but through making non-conformity psychologically unbearable, how communities would turn on members who refused to assimilate, and how the transformed would be indistinguishable from the original, except for complete emotional flatness and inability to understand why anyone would resist. Every element of this has been documented in social psychology research on conformity, groupthink, and the mechanisms by which authoritarian movements achieve mass compliance. The film's central horror is that the pod people appear completely normal, can perform their jobs and relationships adequately, but have lost something essential that makes them human. They feel no love, no fear, no individual desire. They exist only to replicate and to convert others. That description matches clinical descriptions of individuals who have undergone ideological capture, so complete that their previous personality has been effectively erased, which has been documented in cult deprogramming, in studies of authoritarianism, and in research on social media radicalization, where individuals become algorithmically optimized versions of themselves with politics but no personality. What makes the film's predictions most disturbing is its depiction of how the transformation spreads through trust networks. Family members transform each other. Friends convert friends. The pods do not take over through force, but through exploitation of existing relationships, and through making resistance increasingly isolated and difficult as more of the community transforms. That mechanism matches how actual extremist recruitment operates, how multi-level marketing schemes spread, and how social media echo chambers achieve ideological homogeneity through progressive exclusion of dissenting voices. The film's ambiguous ending, where it is unclear whether protagonist Miles Bennell successfully warns authorities or whether they too have been transformed, proof prophetic about how resistance to mass movements becomes impossible to distinguish from paranoia, how warnings about genuine threats are dismissed as conspiracy theory, and how by the time the danger becomes undeniable, it is too late to prevent. The original ending, in which Miles screams warnings that nobody believes while pod trucks drive past, was considered too bleak in the studio-forced addition of a framing sequence suggesting authorities will respond. The bleaker version proved more accurate to how actual mass movements operate. Number 7. On the Beach, 1959.
It was on the beach.
Stanley Kramer directed this one for United Artists based on Neville Shute's novel, with a budget of approximately $3 million, and delivered what remains the most accurate depiction of how nuclear war would end human civilization, not through immediate destruction, but through radioactive fallout that would spread globally regardless of who launched weapons or where they detonated, making the entire planet uninhabitable and killing everyone through radiation sickness over months and years. Every element of this has been confirmed by nuclear modeling, by atmospheric research, and by studies of radioactive isotope dispersal from bomb tests and accidents. The film follows the crew of an American nuclear submarine that survived the war by being submerged and that surfaces to find Australia still habitable, but with radiation spreading south from the northern hemisphere, where the war occurred. The crew and the Australian population wait for the inevitable, knowing they have months before the fallout reaches them, and that there is nowhere to escape. That depiction of nuclear war as creating delayed global extinction rather than immediate localized destruction was controversial in 1959, when civil defense authorities promoted the myth that nuclear war was survivable with proper preparation. It has been confirmed by every serious study since. What makes On the Beach's predictions most disturbing is its depiction of how people respond to certain death, which ranges from denial to quiet acceptance to attempts to maintain normalcy until the end. The characters continue working, falling in love, racing cars, and planning futures they know will not exist. That psychological response matches documented behavior in populations facing inevitable catastrophe, from climate refugees who continue normal activities until forced displacement to people in hospice care who discuss next year's plans. The human inability to emotionally process certain doom has been confirmed by research showing that people systematically underestimate existential risks even when intellectually understanding them. The film's ending shows empty cities, abandoned cars, and a Salvation Army banner reading, "There is still time, brother," blowing in contaminated wind, suggesting both the religious hope that proved false and the scientific warning that went unheeded. That image of civilization ending not with violence, but with silence as the last humans die, has influenced every subsequent depiction of nuclear aftermath, and remains the most likely scenario if nuclear war occurs. Number 6. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957.
Scott?
Jack Arnold directed this one for Universal Pictures, with a budget of approximately $800,000, and delivered what remains the most accurate prediction of how exposure to invisible environmental contaminants would cause cascading cellular damage that conventional medicine could not diagnose or treat. How corporations and governments would deny responsibility for environmental poisoning, and how individuals affected by novel chemical exposure would be dismissed as hysterical or delusional until the damage became undeniable. Grant Williams plays Scott Carey, who begins shrinking after exposure to a radioactive mist while on a boating trip, and the film's depiction of how his condition develops, how authorities respond, and how he is progressively isolated, matches documented patterns from actual chemical exposure, incidents with disturbing precision. The film shows Scott passing through a strange fog while at sea, experiencing no immediate symptoms, and only weeks later, beginning to notice unexplained physical changes. That delayed onset exactly matches how exposure to radioactive materials, heavy metals, and persistent organic pollutants manifests symptoms months or years after exposure. The film was released in 1957. The first major studies documenting delayed effects of environmental contaminants were not published until the 1960s and 70s, and legal recognition of environmental illness did not occur until the 1980s. What makes The Incredible Shrinking Man's predictions most disturbing is its depiction of how medical authorities respond to Scott's condition. They acknowledge he is shrinking, but can find no cause and offer no treatment. They suggest psychological factors. They imply he may be fabricating symptoms. That response matches documented medical gaslighting of patients with environmental illnesses, including Gulf War syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, and chemical sensitivities, all of which were initially dismissed as psychosomatic before biological mechanisms were eventually confirmed. The film's most prescient element is its depiction of Scott's progressive isolation as he shrinks. He can no longer participate in normal society. His marriage deteriorates. He becomes literally invisible to the systems designed to help him. That metaphorical invisibility matches the actual experience of people suffering from environmental illnesses who find themselves unable to work, unable to access appropriate medical care, and unable to get legal recognition of corporate or government responsibility for their exposure. The film ends with Scott shrinking into the subatomic realm, suggesting that environmental damage operates at scales beyond human perception, but with effects that are utterly real. The number 5, The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951.
The ship is now resting exactly where it landed 2 hours ago, and so far there is no sign of life from inside it.
Robert Wise directed this one for 20th Century Fox with a budget of approximately $1,200,000, and delivered what remains the most accurate prediction of how humanity's development of nuclear weapons would be perceived as existential threat, not just to ourselves, but to any neighboring civilizations that might exist. How governments would respond to contact from advanced civilizations with military force before attempting communication, and how the gap between technological capability and moral development would make humanity genuinely dangerous to the cosmos. Michael Rennie plays Klaatu, an alien visitor who arrives in Washington, D.C., with a message that Earth's development of atomic weapons and rocket technology has made it a threat that will not be tolerated. The film's central premise is that an interstellar civilization has been monitoring Earth and has determined that humanity combining nuclear weapons with space travel capability represents unacceptable risk to other worlds. Klaatu delivers an ultimatum: abandon violence or be destroyed as a preventive measure. That scenario has been seriously discussed by astrophysicists and SETI researchers as a likely explanation for the Fermi paradox, the question of why we have detected no alien civilizations, despite the statistical likelihood they exist. Several prominent scientists, including Stephen Hawking, warned that advertising Earth's presence might invite exactly the kind of preemptive neutralization Klaatu describes. What makes the film's predictions accurate is its understanding that any civilization capable of interstellar travel would necessarily view primitive nuclear-armed species as dangerous children, playing with matches near a powder magazine. The film depicts Klaatu's frustration with human irrationality, with our inability to cooperate even when survival depends on it, and with our tendency to respond to the unknown with violence. Those observations have been confirmed by decades of game theory research, studies of international cooperation failures, and the demonstrated inability of nations to coordinate on existential threats, including climate change and pandemic response. The robot Gort, which serves as enforcer of interstellar peace, represents autonomous weapon systems programmed to eliminate threats without human judgment or mercy. Klaatu explains that civilizations surrendered sovereignty to these machines specifically because organic beings could not be trusted to maintain peace. That prediction of AI-controlled weapons and automated kill decisions has become reality with drone warfare, autonomous defense systems, and current development of AI weapons that can select and engage targets without human authorization. The film suggested this was inevitable. Military development has confirmed it. Number 4, World Without End, 1956. Edward Burns directed this one for Allied Artists Pictures with a budget of approximately $200,000 and delivered what remains the most accurate prediction of how nuclear war survivors would be forced underground by surface radiation, how genetic damage from radiation would create permanent mutations in surviving populations, how surface dwellers would devolve into primitive mutant tribes, and how the loss of scientific and industrial knowledge would make rebuilding impossible, even centuries after the war. The film follows astronauts who crash land on Earth in the year 2503 to discover civilization destroyed by nuclear war in 1979 and survivors split between underground cities maintaining technology and surface mutants living in barbarism. The film's depiction of underground survival as the only viable option after nuclear war has been confirmed by every serious study of nuclear winter scenarios. Surface temperatures would drop, agriculture would fail, and radiation levels would remain elevated for decades or centuries, depending on the weapons used and the number of detonations. The film shows the underground survivors maintaining technology but unable to return to the surface because radiation makes it uninhabitable, which matches current models of how long fallout contamination would persist. What makes World Without End's predictions most disturbing is its depiction of genetic damage creating permanent mutations that are passed to subsequent generations. The surface dwellers in the film are not simply suffering from radiation sickness, but have become genuinely different organisms, incapable of breeding with normal humans and degraded in intelligence and capability. That prediction has been confirmed by studies of populations near Chernobyl and Fukushima, showing measurable genetic changes that persist across generations, and by research on how radiation causes inheritable mutations that accumulate rather than dissipate over time. The film's most prescient element is its depiction of knowledge loss. The underground survivors have technology, but can no longer manufacture many components, because the industrial base required to produce them no longer exists. They can maintain, but not build. That scenario matches current understanding of how complex technological civilization depends on vast interconnected supply chains and specialized knowledge that would be impossible to preserve through catastrophic population collapse. Studies of how quickly technical knowledge is lost, even in stable societies, suggest that a nuclear war reducing population by 90% would result in permanent loss of most advanced technology within a single generation. Number 3, The War of the Worlds, 1953. Byron Haskin directed this one for Paramount Pictures, based on H.G. Wells's novel, with a budget of approximately $2 million, and delivered what remains the most accurate prediction of how mass panic would spread through populations during disaster, how civil order would collapse within hours of perceived existential threat, how authorities would be overwhelmed and unable to maintain control, and how social bonds would disintegrate with people abandoning communities and families in desperate attempts at individual survival. The film depicts Martian invasion and humanity's complete inability to mount organized resistance. But the real prediction is about human behavior under catastrophic stress. The film's depiction of panic spreading faster than actual danger has been confirmed by every major disaster study since. The sequences showing highways jammed with fleeing civilians, churches packed with people seeking religious salvation, stores being looted, and authority figures being ignored or attacked match documented behavior from Hurricane Katrina, the Fukushima evacuation, and COVID-19 panic buying. The film suggests that social order is far more fragile than people believe, and that collapse happens not gradually, but catastrophically once critical thresholds are crossed. What makes the War of the Worlds predictions most accurate is its depiction of how mass media accelerates panic. Radio broadcasts in the film spread fear faster than the Martians spread destruction, creating refugee flows and social collapse in areas not yet threatened. That prediction of media-driven panic amplification has been confirmed by research on social media's role in spreading misinformation, creating bank runs, and triggering stampedes and riots. The film was made 4 years after Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast caused actual panic. It understood that the information ecosystem itself could be more dangerous than the threats it reported. The film's ending, in which humanity is saved not by military might or scientific ingenuity, but by bacteria that Martians have no immunity to, predicted the exact mechanism by which COVID-19 and other zoonotic diseases pose existential risk to civilization. The film suggested that the real threats to advanced technological civilizations come not from external military attack, but from biological agents that sophisticated technology cannot defend against. Pandemic research has confirmed this completely. Number 2. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953. Eugene Laurier directed this one for Warner Brothers, based on Ray Bradbury's short story, with a budget of approximately $200,000, and delivered what remains the most accurate prediction of how nuclear testing would release ancient pathogens frozen in ice for millennia, how melting Arctic ice would expose organisms that modern immune systems have no defense against, and how the intersection of climate change and nuclear contamination would create biological threats that science could not control. The film shows a nuclear test in the Arctic, awakening a frozen dinosaur that carries prehistoric diseases. And while the dinosaur is fiction, the mechanism of frozen pathogens being released by warming temperatures has been confirmed by Arctic research with disturbing specificity. The film depicts nuclear blast heat, melting Arctic ice, and releasing something that has been frozen since prehistory. That exact scenario has occurred multiple times in the past 2 decades as climate change has caused rapid Arctic warming. Scientists have recovered live bacteria, frozen for hundreds of thousands of years, have documented the release of previously extinct pathogens, including anthrax that killed reindeer herds and infected humans, and have warned that pandemic-level diseases may exist in permafrost, waiting to be released by continued warming. The film predicted this in 1953. The first documented case of ancient pathogens being released from thawing permafrost occurred in 2016. What makes The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms most prescient is its depiction of the creature carrying diseases that modern medicine cannot treat, and that spread from the creature to human populations through contact with its blood. That prediction of extinct pathogens for which no immunity or treatment exists has been confirmed by every study of permafrost microorganisms. Researchers have found bacteria and viruses that predate human evolution, and that modern immune systems would have no capacity to recognize or resist. The probability of pandemic-level outbreak from permafrost increases each year as temperatures rise. The film ends with the military killing the creature using a radioactive isotope, which kills it but contaminates New York Harbor. That ironic conclusion, solving one problem by creating another, perfectly captures how humanity approaches existential risks by deploying technologies that create new dangers. Nuclear weapons were built to end war and created existential threat. Fossil fuels powered development and created climate catastrophe. The pattern the film identified has been confirmed by every major technological deployment since. Mémoire number 1, Desk Set, 1957. Walter Lang directed this one for 20th Century Fox, based on William Marchand's play, with a budget of approximately $2,500,000, and delivered what remains the most disturbingly accurate prediction of how automation would eliminate knowledge workers, how corporations would deploy artificial intelligence to replace human judgment with algorithmic efficiency, how workers would be lied to about the threat technology posed to their employment, and how the fundamental question of whether machines could genuinely replace human intelligence would remain unresolved even as the replacement happened anyway. Spencer Tracy plays Richard Sumner, an efficiency expert installing an electronic computer called EMERAC in a television network's research department. Katharine Hepburn plays Bunny Watson, who runs the department with 3 other women whose encyclopedic knowledge and research skills are about to be made obsolete. The film depicts EMERAC as a room-sized computer that can answer reference questions, retrieve information, and perform research tasks that currently require human experts. That description precisely matches how large language models and AI research tools function today, and the film's depiction of how the technology would be deployed, how workers would respond, and how management would handle the transition has been confirmed by every major automation wave since with disturbing specificity. The film was made in 1957. The first major studies of technological unemployment did not appear until the 1960s, and serious economic analysis of AI replacing knowledge workers did not begin until the 2010s. What makes Desk Set's predictions most accurate is its depiction of how corporations would introduce automation. Management assures workers that the computer is simply a tool to help them work more efficiently, that nobody will lose their jobs, that human judgment remains essential. The workers do not believe these assurances, and their skepticism proves justified when the computer's true purpose becomes clear. That pattern of corporate dishonesty about automation's impact has been documented in every industry that has undergone technological displacement, from factory automation through call center offshoring to current AI deployment. Companies consistently claim technology will augment rather than replace workers, and workers consistently discover this was a lie only after the replacement has already occurred. The film shows the research department women as genuinely expert in their field, capable of answering obscure questions from memory, understanding context and nuance, and providing judgment that goes beyond simple fact retrieval. The film asks whether EMERACs can truly replace that expertise, or whether it can only mimic the surface appearance of knowledge while lacking genuine understanding. That question remains unresolved in the film, and remains unresolved in current debates about large language models, which can generate convincing text without possessing actual comprehension, can retrieve information without understanding context, and can appear intelligent without being intelligent. The film's depiction of EMERAC making errors that humans must correct predicted exactly how AI systems fail in practice. The computer processes payroll and fires the entire research department by mistake because it has been programmed with efficiency parameters that do not account for human factors. That scenario of A, Seodai making catastrophic errors through literal interpretation of instructions without common sense understanding has occurred repeatedly in automated hiring systems, credit scoring algorithms, medical diagnosis tools, and content moderation systems. The film understood in 1957 that machines would be simultaneously powerful and stupid in ways that would create genuine danger. What makes the film most prescient is its ending, which resolves the immediate crisis by keeping the research department employed, but leaves the fundamental question unanswered. EMERAC did not successfully replace human workers this time, but the technology exists and will be refined and will eventually succeed in making human knowledge workers obsolete. The film suggests this is inevitable, and that worker resistance can only delay rather than prevent technological displacement. That prediction has been confirmed by 70 years of automation, progressively eliminating categories of employment that were previously considered impossible to automate. the film's treatment of the women who face replacement is remarkably sophisticated for 1957. They are not depicted as technophobic or backwards. They understand the technology and recognize its capabilities. Their resistance is not to the machine itself, but to the economic system that will discard them despite their expertise once a cheaper alternative exists. That understanding that automation is fundamentally about power and profit rather than about technological capability has been confirmed by research showing that jobs are often automated not because machines perform them better, but because machines are cheaper and more controllable than human workers. The character of Bunny Watson represents a type of worker who has largely disappeared from the economy, the human reference librarian, whose value came from breadth of knowledge, speed of recall, and ability to understand what people actually needed even when they could not articulate it clearly. That profession has been almost entirely eliminated by search engines and AI assistants, exactly as the film predicted. The film asks whether something valuable has been lost in that replacement, whether the efficiency gained through automation has costs that are not captured in productivity metrics, and whether human judgment contains qualities that machines cannot replicate regardless of computational power. The film was a commercial success and received positive reviews, but was understood primarily as a romantic comedy rather than as serious speculation about automation's future impact. The technological predictions were considered fanciful because computers in 1957 filled entire rooms and could barely perform arithmetic. The idea that they might someday answer complex reference questions, retrieve obscure information instantly, and replace educated knowledge workers seemed as impossible as the giant ants in them. Both predictions proved accurate. The film that audiences watched as light entertainment while assuming the technology depicted was pure fantasy has been revealed as the most precise prediction of our current economic moment that 1950s science fiction produced. These 11 films predicted surveillance capitalism, climate refugees, social media addiction, environmental catastrophe, nuclear winter, mass conformity, AI replacement of knowledge workers, and technological unemployment decades before any of these existed. They were dismissed as fantasy. Every prediction came true. The future arrived exactly as 1950s science fiction warned it would.